Okay. Hello, my name is Ariana Seguera, and today I will be presenting about the whale shark, which is Rhynchodon typus, and its migration pattern mystery. So to start off, to learn a little bit more about the whale shark, it is the biggest fish that is still alive on Earth. It is a fish despite being called a whale shark. You can find it under the order Oryctolobiformes. And this order is also known for the nurse sharks and basking sharks. The whale shark is a pelagic species, which means you can find it really typically in the open ocean and not at all in shallow waters. These whale sharks will migrate really long distances and they will be considered cosmopolitan species because of this. Here is a picture or a diagram of the whale shark. As you can see, it has a flattened head and a terminal mouth. Now, a terminal mouth is really common on species under the Oryctolobiformes. This means that the mouth will always be positioned posterior to the eye. They will also have 5 gill slits, as you can see here. They will have a heterocercal caudal fin. And by this, it means that there is no symmetry in the fin, so it's not equal right here. Another really significant characteristic about the whale shark is its really unique patterning. It is really easy to spot because of the checkered sort of pattern it has. So it will have white lines and white dots, and these will really be shown compared to the background of its kind of bluish grayish color. So what is the mystery for these whale sharks? There are 3 things that they don't really, scientists don't really know about these species, which is that mating is a really hard thing to come across in whale sharks. There have only been 2 accounts of mating, and I will get into that later. And recently, last year in 2019, there was one attempt that was able to be captured in photographs. The next mystery is if there is one aggregation or multiple aggregations around the world. Now, scientists don't know if they should classify the populations of whale sharks as one big population that is just split in different locations, or if there are multiple populations of these animals. And the third mystery is the most researched actually, and it's about its feeding. Now, they have been observed multiple times feeding along the shores in multiple places. However, it is not certain that these locations are a set location as to where they choose to feed due to really low site fidelity. And site fidelity is a location where animals usually come back to every year or every month or every week to feed. So the first mystery is its mating and reproduction. Now, it has been observed from the 2 accounts that I will get into in a bit, that they do attempt to mate at the surface with the male and the female positioning themselves belly to belly. There have been very few occurrences of them being observed mating, as I previously said. We do know how they reproduce, and this has been thanks to the study of other sharks like the nurse shark that have been studied and compared to the anatomy of the whale shark. Now, whale sharks are livebearers. This means that the offspring comes out as a live baby once it comes out of the placenta. However, they are really interesting because they are ovoviviparous species. Now, this means that the egg will be hatching inside the mother's uterus, and once the offspring is out of the egg, it will stay in the mother's placenta, and it will come out of the mother into the ocean until it's ready, until it's fully developed. This is a picture of a male and female shark near Ningaloo Reef, Australia, and it's the first picture ever taken that has caught the attempt of mating between a male and a female. It was said that the male was zigzagging around the female for a couple of minutes, trying to get close enough to her and position himself belly to belly. However, they did not actually end up mating. It was just an attempt. And this was taken in 2019. So June last year. So St. Helena Island is a really important island. It is a remote volcanic island northwest of the South Africa in the South Atlantic. Now, this island has been known for the spotting of whale sharks. And in 2005, the chief of the island's fisheries saw a male and a female coming belly to belly right below the surface. So they were starting to attempt that mating ritual. And then again in 2007, a professional fisherman reported two males trying to get close to a female. However, they were fighting to get into the right position, but none of them ended up being able to mate with her. Both accounts were made 16 kilometers offshore of the island, which is sometimes, it coincides with how far off the shore they come to feed as well. This was taken in St. Helena Island around January 2013, and it is a really important picture because it could be an apparent pregnant female whale shark. And you can see this white belly here, and it's been said that that is a really clear sign of the pregnancy of a whale shark. But still, they have never seen an actual copulation. Now, this brings us to the next mystery, which is to know if there is any gene mixing at all between populations of whale sharks across the world. There's very, very little known about these different populations and their genetics. This is due to the, it's really hard to tag them, and these tags usually come off really quickly. Their skin is really tough to penetrate, so tags don't usually end up staying on for long, and it interferes with signaling of their position once they start to move across oceans. It is really still unclear, again, if it's one single population or if they are different populations that are isolated across the world. There was a study conducted by Jennifer Schmidt in which they separate or they classify whale sharks depending on where they were found. So there are three possible locations into which they were grouped in, which is the Caribbean, the Indian, and the Pacific Oceans. And this all depended on how far they migrated off of these locations. So in the study, it was in 2009, and the whale sharks were interbred with other populations. So that is one of the basic results that they found with this study. They also found that there was really little genetic differentiation between aggregations sampled when they were feeding in locations across the world. Gene flow was actually really significant between distant locations, that were um, hotspots for whale sharks. So this is really important because this means that there is a lot of genetic sharing between these populations, meaning that they have come in contact with each other and they have been breeding with each other. In this chart, it is a FST matrix for the whale shark populations. Now, what this means is that the Caribbean sharks were the most different when they were compared to the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean sharks. They were still similar, but they had a little bit more of difference in their alleles. This also shows that from the Pacific and the Indian, they are the most similar compared to Caribbean, but they all still share a really close sharing of genes. So that is really still kind of a mystery to scientists. They are not sure if they should be grouping them as one population or as if as different isolated ones due to so much genetic flow in such large distances. And the third and the last kind of mystery, which is the most researched actually, is the feeding habit of whale sharks. We do know that they use filter feeding as their principal mechanism. However, there are 3 possible ways in which they can do this. They usually filter feed at the surface. They can stay in a stationary vertical position and wait until the food actually comes into their mouth. Or they can go right below the surface and stay in a stationary horizontal position with a constant open mouth, again, waiting for the food to go in by itself. Now, these whale sharks are really broad kind of feeders. They prefer planktonic or nectonic prey, and this includes kind of like little crabs, krill, shrimp, copepods. They really like small schools of fishes, and it can be kind of like sardines or anchovies, tuna, snappers. They have a really broad appetite. So where do they feed? Whale sharks are really hard to track, but they are really easy to see once they come together to feed, because it's usually lots of them that are attracted to big kind of spawning of fish. These aggregations will usually come together and eat just offshore. So still really close to shore, and that's where they prefer to do their feeding. There are still really rare occurrences of them being offshore, but it has been seen in a couple of occasions. Some of the hotspots where they have been observed are Belize, Honduras, Mexico, and Australia. In Belize, they coincided, or whale shark aggregations coincided with the spawn of the reef snappers. They were seen to really come together and just prey on the reef snappers. In Utila, Honduras, it's an island, they were seen to coincide with the spawn of T. atlanticus, which is tuna. They really just appeared once it was time for T. atlanticus to spawn. It was that peak time. And then in Ningaloo Reef, Australia, they didn't quite observe what they were preying on, but they did observe that it was the same prey that the herring were going after. After a few tests of the herring's insides, what they ate and stuff, they figured out it was a planktonic species, but they still couldn't figure out exactly which one it was. Here are a couple pictures of whale sharks and their feeding mechanisms. So here you can see it approaching the school of fish. Right here, it's getting ready to kind of stay in that position in the middle of the entire school of the fish. So it had more probability of getting some. And then here, you can barely see it, but it's kind of like this. It stays in a stationary position and just kind of waits for the herring to kind of come into a mouth when it gulps all that water, and then it's just filtered with its gills. This is another type of feeding mechanism. It's still filter feeding, but here you can see it, it's right at the surface, and it stays with its mouth open, and it's again gulping all that water and just kind of waiting for the reef snappers to just kind of go down. And then again, here it's just right below the surface, and it adopts that stationary horizontal position again. And you can see here are all the fish kind of just, being gulped down. And this was in Mexico, the Yucatan Peninsula. So even though most of the pieces of the puzzle have been solved, it is still not 100% sure if these whale sharks are fully researched. So we do know a lot about its feeding habits, we do know its mechanism, we do know what they prefer to eat on. However, sites of feeding are across the world. There's no site fidelity, so there's really no set location that someone can say they went to feed at, or they return to so they can feed. For mating and reproduction, we do know that they are an oviviparous species. However, we still don't know exactly their mating ritual or how they actually mate. We do assume that belly to belly is the right or the first step as to how they copulate, but it's still unclear if there are other maybe steps or processes in which they engage to actually reproduce. And again, their genetics, even though they are really similar and they don't differentiate a lot across populations, it is still really a topic of debate between scientists to actually group them in different populations, or if they should be considered just one population of the species that has just been scattered around the world. Again, it's really hard to know because of the lack of possible research procedures that can be made on these animals. It is really hard to tag something and for the tag to stay on it due to conditions of the water, but somehow there will be a way in which they can be more further and thoroughly researched, and hopefully it will give us a little more insight as to how these sharks live and continue to amaze all the tourists and people. So I hope you liked my presentation on whale sharks. Thank you.